Steve Luhaji. Steve has been to the BTA a couple times, some of you know him. So we invited Steve because, everybody's just gonna do that now. Just yours? Normally that happens, everybody goes on. Okay. The other thing, could have sworn I heard elevator music, a minute ago, maybe they turned it off. You guys turned it off? Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna introduce Steve now. So Steve has a story, it's pretty compelling. I got a call from Harry Burgess, who's the FSO over at the BTA, and said, hey, for the safety stand, and they're checking Steve at this event. Okay, people have events. But, called Steve, I said, what's your story? We talked through it, and the interesting part is, it's a story of not just, knowing your EPs, it's a story about knowing your aircraft, and then having the fortitude to sit there and let things develop a little bit, figure things out, rather than just reacting and doing what may come naturally to start with. So it's a really compelling story. It's one of those things that, things just don't go wrong in test aircraft, where you don't know stuff, things don't go wrong on maintenance flights. That's not the only place. Crap happens when you're flying along fat, dumb, and happy on a day VFR, going from A to B flight, and this is one of those. And it's one of the reasons we get together to talk through stuff and things through stuff. So I think it's a great story. A little bit about Steve. It's 4,200 hours in helicopters. Got his private license back in 2014. He's an ATP with type ratings in the 189 and 139, and has experience in 15 other type of aircraft. Don't worry, some of them are Bells. He still flies Bell stuff too. Steve has had a 14-year non-aviation career at Southern California Gas prior to sitting in a helicopter. But once he took his first demo flight, he was hooked. After obtaining his CFI and CFLI, his first job was being a flight instructor in the R-22, where he obtained a gold seal on his instructor certificate. This then led to flying law enforcement patrol for the city of Lakewood as a civilian pilot in the joint program with Los Angeles County Sheriffs. Around this time, he began flying the 412 API for a private owner, which was one of his students, and annually completes refresher training at the BTA. Eventually, through time and experience, he was built up. He resigned from the gas company and became a full-time pilot for Air in the Gulf of Mexico, moving offshore. He then started flying IFR co-pilot in the S-76C++, and eventually worked his way up to dual-rated IFR captain in the 189 and 139. Working in the Gulf, he was able to obtain part-time work at home doing aerial firefighting, where he has his interagency card. It was as a new IFR captain that the event we'll be talking about took place. He now flies helicopter air ambulance for Reach Air Medical in Imperial as a single pilot IFR captain. So you can see he's flown a lot of different models of aircraft, but he's also flown a lot of different missions that we do. So he's got a lot of experience. Steve, you're welcome to come on up.
All right, check. Okay, sounds good. We got this. Awesome. Thank you. There it is. Okay, everybody. Good morning. I want to first start by saying that a little under 10 years ago, when I first started flying, I never thought I'd be in a room addressing Bell Helicopter about something that happened to me. So, really is an honor to be here. So, thanks for those of you who worked to get me out here, and glad it could all work out. I'm glad I could be here talking to y'all. So this, there's a few things I wanted to mention before we get into this. I would like you all, especially those of you who are pilots, to, as I'm talking, really imagine yourself being in the cockpit with me, or if you were, you were flying this thing. We've been around long enough. We've all heard those things where people have accidents, incidents, and you kind of go, oh yeah, that's cool, glad it all worked out, or the opposite too. Sometimes I was guilty of this, doing the armchair quarterback, right? Where you go, oh, come on, like we know what happened there. They just shouldn't have been doing that. Yeah, that all stopped as soon as this happened, because you realize you never know what the heck is going on in someone's aircraft when they have something happen. Even if it seems obvious, you don't know unless you were there. So I would just encourage you all to, again, just think about what you would do as I go through and kind of describe step by step what happened here. So this was actually a photo that my co-pilot took from this day. That was September 24th, 2022. So that is the AW139 811 Tango Alpha sitting on the Thunderhawk out in Mississippi Canyon. For those of you who ever flew offshore, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But this day started as filming a safety video for the oil company we were flying for. So all morning we were, getting filmed, loading passengers, how they're briefed, loading bags, seeing us pre-flight, just the basic things that we would do every day. So then we fly offshore, and it's about an hour flight out there. We fly offshore, and now it's the waiting game, which is, in the twin world, is rare. Usually you're turning and burning, hot fueling, offloading, and you're on the deck for maybe 10 minutes or so, and then you're going inbound and you're just repeating, right? Well, this was one of those things where you gotta go and shut down. So, okay, we go and shut down. That was sometime in the morning, maybe around like 11 or noon. So then around 4:45, 5 p.m., it's time to bring everybody back in. So we fire up, we take off after eating way too much and sitting there watching football all day and just kind of generally being in a daze, right? In we go. So now this is where things kind of start getting interesting. So we've made it almost all the way back. We're 7 minutes outside of the airport, and all of a sudden we start smelling this burning, acrid plastic smoke kind of smell. Been through that before, especially in this aircraft for different reasons, but this particular time, the passengers in the back, they're not on headsets, so they can't just talk to you, so they have to kind of yell, okay? Also important to note, this was post-COVID, so we had what they call the COVID curtain. Usually the cockpit would be open to the passengers in the back, so they can kind of see what we're doing. We had that barrier up. It's just like a cloth vinyl kind of barrier. So they have to yell pretty loud for us to hear them, okay? So that said, we're 7 minutes outside the airport, 4,500 feet, about to descend. All of a sudden, you hear everyone in the back burn. They just go, hey, something's burning back here, something's burning, right? So, I look at my co-pilot, he looks at me, and we kind of do one of those okay, yeah, we smell it too, but looking at everything in the aircraft, on the PFD, MFD, everything's fine, right? So I go, David, what do you think? I was flying. I happen to be flying this leg, and so I'm on the controls, so my co-pilots, we work for each other, pilot flying, pilot monitoring. So I asked David, I was like, hey, you know what, go ahead and turn the air off. That's probably what it is, and we'll just take it from there. So he switches the air off. I get on the PA. I told them, hey, we smell that too. We're not getting any indications of anything wrong with the aircraft. We'll just, we're going to be on the ground in 7 minutes. I know it's going to get kind of hot, but we'll just deal with it. I think we'll be all right. Okay, so there we go. No sooner do I say that, I guesstimate it was probably a minute, maybe a minute and a half later, that at some point in everyone's life, I'm assuming we've all maybe thrown gas on a fire. That sound it makes when you do that? Well, that's what you hear. And immediately from the overhead circuit breaker panel, immediately the cockpit just fills with smoke. I'm talking thick, orange-brown, plastic electrical fire smoke. And to the point where in seconds, too, this was that fast. I can no longer see David sitting on the other side of the cockpit from me. I can see the bottom portion of my PFD with my triple tack. And at that point, simultaneously, the aircraft's now going, I'm using the term, but out of control, if you will. So cockpit's filling with smoke, low RPM audio's going off. RPM sits at 100 in this in normal cruise, right? So now I'm down at 84%. And the aircraft is doing all sorts of things. As soon as everything kind of happened, natural instinct was get the collective down, right? And I want to say that, you're going to hear me say it a lot here, but the collective remains down against the stop throughout this entire, what wound up being half-hour adventure to get this aircraft on the ground. So you'll see as we go why this was confusing and also important to the whole thing. So we got a cockpit filled with smoke. We got NR at around 83, 84%. We got an aircraft that's not reacting normally. We have a collective that's fully against the ground. And now we're at a point where it's legitimately hard to breathe. I'm starting to feel that we're ingesting a lot of smoke because that COVID barrier kept everything up with us in the front. So now it's, okay, what are we gonna do? And